I think animals are appropriate to have in our food producing system. Perennial pasture, grassland systems are really ideal for maximizing the amount of carbon that goes into the soil and keeping the carbon in the soil.
One of the most important tenets of sustainable or regenerative ag is keeping the soil healthy. We're learning more and more as time goes on about what that means, which is basically keeping the soil alive.
Some of the areas on our farm are probably better fit for a brickyard than for an organic vegetable farm. Our soil makeup is actually really challenging to employ some of our no-till practices because our soil is so tight. It's not very perforated. Say 3/4 of the beds have a synthetic mulch. We're using reusable landscape fabric. It suppresses weeds, it helps retain moisture. That means that we're reliant on less irrigation. Is that when the soils are covered either with mulch, cover crops, plants, or synthetic mulch, there's less carbon release from the soil, so we're actually helping to retain carbon.
And we also know that it's been important to keep the ground covered to prevent erosion, because if there's no plants or on the dirt, if it rains or if the wind blows, then the soil washes away. And that was one of the main problems with the Dust Bowl, is that people were tilling and there was no cover. All that beautiful soil in the Midwest just blew away.
Keeping the fertility of the soil and enhancing it is one of our main goals as we grow here. So we want to put in as much as we're taking out. And we bring in quite a bit of local organic compost every year to amend the beds with. And sometimes we'll go to a local horse farm and collect their manure and bedding and make a little bit of compost. We buy in some organic compost locally. And we also utilize cover cropping, so we'll plant oats and peas in the spring. Peas fix nitrogen from the air and return it to the soil, and the oats create organic material to return to the soil.
Using the kind of grazing method that I use, which is intensive rotational grazing, where animals are rotating through the system. They're never spending more than 24 hours in a given field. They have plenty of grass to eat, but by the time you're ready to move them on, the grass is beautifully eaten down, and then you let that grass rest. That system is super high productivity. You're getting up to 1/3 of that carbon that's being fixed in photosynthesis goes into the roots. It's then exuded out. Carbohydrate is released into the soil to feed all the microbial populations down there. So you have this really strong carbon cycling in a system like this.
Now we're taking an area of the farm that literally is pure clay with sand and are now building topsoil very, very quickly using materials that we've been able to gather from campus, things like cardboard, taking that out of the waste stream, trees that have fallen on campus that have been chipped and brought here, compost that has been made by Bard Buildings and Grounds employees from food waste from Bard Dining, leaves that they gather from campus. And we're building a bunch of no-till raised beds and experimenting with hugelkultur as well, which is a technique of building on top of wood chips and wood compost piles that will break down and serve as beautiful topsoil that we don't need to use any machinery to turn over. We made 6 beds this spring. Oh, and let me not forget the old hay that was used to insulate different areas on campus. And now it's the most beautiful, black, teeming with life topsoil. And we planted garlic in that last week, and we look forward to using those beds for other experimental crops next spring.
We're using animals to perform an ecosystem service for us. We've designed a farming system where one of the elements in the system is the livestock, and they're helping us manage the pasture to maximize carbon, maximize sort of soil health, and maintain a system that's quite sustainable. At the same time, we're producing meat for ourselves, and it's quality fats and carbohydrates from that system.
We're in a moment of climate crisis. When you're tilling and when you're killing all these microorganisms, that is soil carbon, and when it's dead and washed away or uprooted, that releases a lot of carbon into the air. So conventional farming is a big, it releases a lot of carbon. Whereas if you cover crop, the plants as they grow sequester carbon. They take it from the air and put it back in the soil. So you want to keep things covered as much as possible to keep the soil going from the atmosphere back into the ground instead of the other way around.
We're not putting synthetic fertilizers, pesticides on our fields. The food that we're producing is healthier. We're taking care of our waters and our soils and soil microbiology, our pollinators, all of the helpers out there, seen and unseen. They're not being damaged by these synthetic inputs. I think that the practices that we're employing and moving towards are healthier for our soil, air, water, bodies, minds, spirits, all of it.
Nematodes they're not really bugs and they're not really bacteria. They're like in between the two. They're these tiny little things that are poorly understood. And they feed off of fungi, roots, other nematodes, other little creatures. And when they're being helpful, they can help in nutrient management by eating some things and then making that available to the plant's roots, or they can help in pest management by eating unhelpful other little creatures. But they can also, the dangerous nematodes can eat your plant's roots, they can spread disease, so they're a very complicated subset of little creatures that you have to pay attention to in your system.